We are live here on Tuesday night. I am Dr. Boz, and we have a great show for you tonight. We are definitely pushing a few buttons on my end, and we're going to show you a little bit about that as I give you the first few slides of what will be a great presentation. Because I have people saying, you're setting a bad example. No one needs to ever tell me not to eat. That's what your program's going to do. That it's a lot of time and money here, and I'm on a fixed income. How can you expect me to afford this? And what am I supposed to do when all this is over? You're not really helping people. They just regain the weight. Welcome to the Dr. Boz Show. We have a great show for you tonight and something that's going to get just a little bit personal. Before we get into that, I have some announcements, and I'm going to do a couple of traditions we do here on the live show. I am also going to make sure I can see your chat as I'm going, because that's a little tiny over there. I'm going to push this button, pop out, and make it big enough for. Thank you everybody for checking my sound. You have definitely been around the channel long enough to know I need help with that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I have had a really full day. You know those days in life where every minute from the beginning to the end is packed out? That's the kind of day I've had. And it is in preparation for our big class that's coming up. This week I have been meeting the coaches, doing the training. They are my students this week in preparation so that when we join together as a tribe and a room full of students, that we can be united, and then they have been served by me and will serve you. So yeah, ketones today 1.3, but that sugar does not surprise me. I have not slept well the last 2 nights, and if there's one thing a continuous glucose monitor does for me, it reminds me how important sleep is. And when I do not sleep well, like when something's on my mind, boy, I woke up the other day, my blood sugars were 107. That does not happen unless I don't sleep. And I would never have looked. So thank you very much, Deb, for the Dr. Boz ratio of 73. Again, pretty good for me, and a little bit of a truth-telling serum there. That yep, definitely things that get me that keep me awake at night. We do have just a couple of announcements that I do want before we get into what I think of as a one of those places where that not everybody will agree with what I do, and that's okay. I've learned that's a sign I'm doing something right. But you're going to hear a lot about behind the scenes about why I do what I'm doing in the next week. And then I am a woman of faith, and I'm asking for prayers that it goes as well the last 2 times, this next time as it did the last 2 times. Let me go over to a quick, here we go. So a couple of things on the website. I just, again, we have continued to, it's almost a full-time job babysitting a website. Like as soon as we think everything's perfectly in line, then we have hiccup days. But one of the places I like folks to go is that Dr. Boz Favorites. We have a few things that are back up and running in that we have Keto Palooza. We also have, did I know this? Continuous glucose monitor here. That is, again, things are up and running. I did not talk to Michelle about that. Keto Palooza is the next speaking engagement I have. It's right after our 21-day challenge. So I will be high on ketones after the next 3 weeks because we are doing a true metabolic boost here. If you are in the course and don't have one of these Keto Mojos, this is the cheapest place to buy it. You get a full, I think it's 75 strips with this and a good discount there. We also show you how to trade in your meter if you have one at home. Last thing is, thank you again. A couple more people did click on there, and my son got to give them a call. It's just the funnest thing for me as a mom to do that. And what I was trying to show you is that there is another place for you to get a continuous glucose monitor if ours is down, and that is Levels, who is having has invited me to do a podcast and a place where I can offer their services as well. We'll get more into that in the next few weeks. And I I am excited to show you a few things we are going to talk about tonight. Because in the forefront of what I have learned over the last few weeks is that, first of all, when I ask people to sign up for the weekly emails, you actually did. It was a very surprising and very welcome. When I ask people to sign up for that email list, they do it. And I kept saying, I wonder how you grow an email list. Well, the first thing is you need to tell them that it that it exists. And we do have some little clips in here there that we only send out to the email people, and of course they keep a close eye on not just doing the weekly stuff that we tell you about, but also the specials and the deals that we try to help you with. I don't know if you saw me do this, but again, my weekly fast, which the holiday was, I did okay on Monday, but I did not do so good on Sunday. So my fast on Sunday didn't start till later in the day, and we were meeting with friends, so I had a glass of wine, which is never good because I become a human again and say, oh, it's okay, I'll exercise it off, I'll get in the sauna, and I did, but my blood sugar was still 107 the next morning. Totally telling on me. But that transparency is what we are all about. We're going to go through a couple things that I actually almost didn't talk about this tonight because we have had some amazing sales. We just have a few slots left in our class. And I can't tell you how much it means to me. Again, many of you know that over the last few years, I've made some moves in life. My husband and I picked up our family and kids, and we moved to Florida. And at the time, we had a 15-year-old who was the youngest of our three sons. And he was in a Catholic high school there, and we slide this piece of paper over across to him in November of 2020, and we ask him to apply, write the application for an all-boys Jesuit school. And he's in a Catholic school in Sioux Falls. We're not Catholic, but we are very much a family of faith. But he hadn't heard the word Jesuit much, and he heard the word all boys. And he goes, Mom, why do you want me to go to a Jewish gay school? Totally a real comment. So that was the beginning of this 15-year-old who in South Dakota can drive without his parents at 14. And he had hand-me-down cars from his older brothers. So he had life so perfect. And now we're having him apply to a Jewish gay school. And we moved to Tampa, and all of his friends go away, and all of our family's back in South Dakota. And my practice is, transferred to Florida with a whole bunch of paperwork. And then it was just one setback after the next. And last summer, I did something I've been dreaming about, which was I rolled the dice and said, if you really want to change people and these chronic diseases, you can't do it one-on-one behind an exam room door. That whatever was supposed to happen with the HIPAA compliance, although doctors and clinics got a lot better about not talking to anybody that didn't have explicit permission from the patient, which was a good thing, it scared the tar out of patients, and they stopped telling their neighbors about what happened behind that exam room door. They stopped having a community of people who are struggling with these same problems, and they were hidden. And it's an awful scenario where somebody says, oh, I can't tell you about what happened in my doctor's visit. It's HIPAA protected. And I'm like, that is not what that was about. That was never what that was about. And it's being in the world of medicine this whole time, I found that patients got further and further and further and further away from the freedom to talk about their problems. HIV was in my career as well, and that made it even more of a secret. Like when you go to the doctor, you don't ask questions why, you don't, have prayer requests that are specific about exactly what your health problems were, because it became a secret. And this was also the beginning of what happens when people are not in community, when they're not having a tribe of other people trying to help them. Well, how do you do that? And how do you do that as a physician with the liability of HIPAA and saying, well, I don't know if I know how to figure that out, but I do know that as a teacher, as an educator, it's an amazing transition. So over the past week, we've had just the most grace-filled week of people saying, I want what you did. They've read the testimonies, they looked what other people had done. So I'm going to go through a few things because even if you're not doing the course, I really want you to hopefully get something that says, if I wasn't doing the course, here's what I would do. And of course, I love seeing the comments of the folks that you relate to that they don't trust their doctor since HIPAA, that HIPAA had a whole bunch of problems and it still has issues. But I think any time that you regulate moral fiber, you're going to fall. You're never going to regulate. You have to have the foundation of that servant's mind and that servant's heart. And medicine is designed to do that. And let me tell you, the application to get into medical school still has a huge screening of people that we want that. But by the time they get out, there's something that goes wrong. Well, let's go into what I hope to be a very useful conversation here, and will be something I hope it generates good questions. Oh, here's the one I want to click on. Here we go. All right, here we go. Yeah, so let me go to the next slide here. So as I was looking through several of the comments over the past week, these are just a handful, but it gives me the ability to answer the questions a little bit better for you, and also teach you. This morning in my support group, several of the folks asked some of these questions, so we're going to go through that as well. So I thought we'd start with the people who are on a fixed income. They wrote in and said, I can't afford this. And I contend that I've been taking care of patients for nearly 25 years. My job has been and continues to be chronic disease management. When you have chronic diseases, there are some rules. The rules of how your doctor sees you and how often they can see you, well, it's run by the government. And there are good intentions, that road to hell paved with good intentions, that some of the government rules include, well, if you're taking care of chronic diseases, you can only discuss that problem, that chronic problem, once every 90 days. So if you come into me with high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, if I wanted to see you every week for 6 weeks, I would have to pick a different chronic problem that we were talking about, and then be very careful not to talk about anything else during that visit. And if I didn't talk about it, then I'm safe to say, you can come back next week, we're going to pick this conversation up where we left off. And indeed, a lot of the education that happens today, that should happen today, and doctors, I do this too, I try very hard to concentrate the time that we are together to deliver the stuff that you can't get outside the exam room. And it isn't easy, and if I did have a visit that was 2 hours long, you would need like 4 other people to come take notes and say, okay, you be in charge of remembering this, and you be in charge of remembering that, and the patient could never take in that much. They're the one that's sick, and they're the one who needs the education, but cannot possibly process as much as I would want to get done in a 2-hour visit. So let's say that every 90 days you get you get to talk about that chronic problem. If you have a very ornery, strategic doctor, whichever one you want to call it, that they said, well, we're talking about blood pressure this week, we're talking about your thyroid management next week, we're going to talk about your diabetes after that, we're going to talk about your obesity after that, we're going to talk about your cancer risks after that. Oh, and cancer risks would be prevention, so that's a completely different rule with the government. I'm just saying it's not all the doctor's fault. If we said the length of a visit is 30 minutes, and I think that's being generous. I think that's cool. When we look at what we are doing in this class, the 21-day, you start out every day with an hour lecture from me. And the lecture sounds like it's something you want to run away from, but I promise, it is you looking inside the journey that I've been through and what I tell patients. We then really prep you in the way to best absorb this much information. The second hour of class every week is, or every day of the weekday, is with your group, is with your small group. And when we do check-ins, when we start looking at what students, when the students get into the classrooms, or when we check them in, they say, this is a live check-in. You will be in a group with 7 to 12 to maybe 15 other people, and in that small group, it is not recorded. You can't go back and look. You are there to check in live. So what hour of the day for the next 3 weeks can you commit to that you're going to have a live check-in? Because it's not recorded. It is only for the time that you've signed up for. The hour in the morning with me is also live, but if you can't make it, you can watch that on replay. And then right after that, the coaches and I have a follow-up appointment, a follow-up meeting that we discuss cases. Because I say those 15 days aren't just, the first week is really this intense delivery of information. But what happens on weeks 2 and 3 is there's a person, a live case that is in the classroom that has a very amazing teachable moment that I don't want to hide behind an exam room door. And I'm not their doctor, I am their educator. And we put this in front of the classroom and saying, here's what I would tell you to do if I was your doctor. And here are the steps that I can look into further, unlike on a YouTube video where, yes, I try to answer your questions, but I don't have access to your labs, I don't have access to your history, and I really don't know what part of the journey you're on or your support system. Well, in these cases, I get to know all that. And your coach also gets to help me figure that all out. So as I look at that, you've got 2 hours every day in the weekday in this class. And then we do ask you to do some work. We say, all right, you need to put in a little time about studying yourself, looking at your numbers, which is what I try to do in an exam room. But when you do it one-on-one and no one around you is doing it, you can't, your spouse isn't doing it, your neighbor doesn't have their doctor do it, well, it becomes a little difficult. But when you're in a classroom where you're going to show up tomorrow and it says, I need you to think about your life and write down this one statement. I need you to look at what your pattern of behavior is and comment on that. And so there's a little homework 5 days a week. So welcome back to school. This is what learning really looks like. When people chirp about medicine not being good, but I'm saying this is what I would do. Well, it is what I did with my mother when she needed one-on-one, very intense discussion. She was dying of cancer and then did not because of this. So 3 hours a day is 180 minutes. If we do that for 15 days, that's 2,700 minutes. Well, if your visits are 30 minutes long, that's 90 appointments. So unless your doctor is a little bit snarky or clever to get you a visit every week for your chronic diseases, 90 visits is going to take you like 10 years to get to see your doctor that often. I actually didn't do the math for that part, but 90 appointments. If you're only seeing that doctor 4 times a year for 30 minutes, that is never going to cover the kind of education that you get in a one-on-one setting for 3 intense weeks. And I'll tell you, I have a story to tell you at the end that I hope you stick around for, because it really, it drove home exactly how it looks on the side of the student. Let's keep going here. All right, back to this. So yes, you've got 90 appointments, and those are going to happen in 3 weeks. All right, so this question really irritated me. Everyone regains the weight. And my goodness, do I hear this a lot. You aren't the first person to say this. And as people put that out there, I find not only are they, quite pessimistic, but they also have they've been around the block usually. They've had that to happen. They've put the weight on, and many times people do gain the weight back when they lose it, but not when you understand some of the things that we cover in here. All right, so if you want the full lecture on this, last week that's what I did, and I thought it really did turn out well. So if you look at this, this is somebody's weight gain at the age of 18, and then all the way up to 45. And when they started at about 150, they ended it at 220, and they put on the weight in seasons of life, okay? We have those. But if you were looking at their hormones, this is what happened to their hormones. They peak, and then they go back down. But the weight doesn't go back down. The hormones don't go all the way back down to where they were. They peak and then they go back down. They don't go back down to where they should have or even close. That's not what happens. You're a human. This is different. And the amount of change that it would take to get down here, nobody's teaching that. Nobody's following that. So each season of life, they put on more and more and more weight. And well, it's very hormone driven. Those hormones are insulin and cortisol and ghrelin, and they become resistant to these over time. So even if they do lower it for a day or so, the memory found in those hormone cells still haunts them, and they don't lose the weight. When you look at the reality of weight loss, we did this, and it's not an accident that I offer this course in February and September, and February and September, twice a year. And when we look at long-term data that says, how do you lose weight? Well, you take off the weight and then you hold it. You hold it to get the hormones to reset so that you can lower it again. So essentially, in reverse of what happened when you were gaining the weight, we have to do that in the setting of the hormones. So in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, we do an intense change. We drop those hormones in a holy Hannah type of way. And yes, they do resurface back to a new set normal, but it's at the lower weight. The weight stays stable. If you want this to come off again, once you get a really good handle on how your body is processing the weight, we say, okay, now plunge it again, and now plunge it again. And, well, hang tight because I will show you there are good hormones that are happening. I just pointed out the negative hormones, but it's the good hormones that are actually much more dynamic. The amount of change that we see in those in 2 weeks, I keep saying 2 weeks, in 21 days, in 3 weeks is, again, a very powerful transition. It does not stay there. Not for anybody, not for me, not for the people who are at a lean body mass. You're going to stress a body and it's going to increase the amount of hormones that it can do, but it will settle back down to a stable weight. And we need your behavior to do that as well, because it isn't it isn't that if I changed your hormones to the perfect hormones that you were going to be at your ideal body weight, you couldn't lose all the weight at once. It's not how weight loss works, not without dropping muscle mass or dissolving bone density. When you're saying, how do you get healthy again? Well, it plunges the hormones and then your body has to stabilize. It plunges the hormones and then the body has to stabilize. It plunges the hormones and the body has to stabilize. And this is the true science behind weight loss. It's sad that many people don't know that, but it's true. So this is a true party foul on our end, and this gets me to one of the stories that I want to tell. So I'm going to go here because I get really distracted by reading your comments. I go back and read them at the end of the show, but my team helps me watch for them as I do this. So when I look at what happens at the end of this 21 day. So let's go back to the first class. We had very brave and trusting people that did this the first time. I had no idea if it was going to work. It was not a sales gimmick when I said, I don't know if I'm ever going to do this again. This might be a crazy idea and nobody benefited. But that's not what happened. We told people, for liability reasons, we can't manage you. You are supposed to have your own support group. It is meant to be an educational season. And I do have malpractice insurance. I am a physician that sees patients, but this impact on patients was far greater than what I was doing in the clinic. And as I looked at these classrooms, we said at the end of this 3 weeks, you guys are all trained by the same person. You all have the same rules. And now, if you continue to meet, it's on you. Well, two things are really important about that. When you watch behavior change, and this is, I know, kind of woo-woo and fluffy, but it really is important. When you look at the behavior changes that we know you have to transform in someone's, to get a new identity, essentially is what happens when people have that weight loss. They become a different version of themselves again, just like they became a different version of themselves when they put on the weight. But if you want them to own it, which means they get the pride and the as well as the responsibility of that success, at the end of the lesson, we need to shift the responsibility to to the person that's losing the weight. We can guide you. We can start this. We can, pull that lawnmower string and get their metabolism really doing well. And we can show you the rules. Here are the rules. Here's what people who lose weight do. Here's what people that get off their medications do. And it's not easy, but so there's a check-in today of a wonderful man who's here in Florida, and he was one of the brave ones. He did the first class. He said, we're coming up upon a year anniversary. And we said, okay, since that class ended, we've been meeting every week like you told us to. And I'm like, good job, because we tell them to do it. Some people didn't do it, but many people did. And these little, I call them baby support groups, meaning they weren't babies. They were just novices at how to have a support group. And it's not too hard, folks. You show up, and as long as they're all trained by the same people, they don't argue over the rules. They know what the rules are. But it was the check-ins. It was the life that they were sharing. And he talked about, he said, well, we did a 1 year in review. What happened to us in this year in review? And he goes, first of all, I'd been following all these other people and looking at all this other stuff along YouTube. And I was the first to say, you can get all this stuff for free on YouTube anyway, just watch her videos. But it was not as organized, and it didn't make sense. And I kept, being distracted by too many people telling us what to do. So for 3 weeks, I did exactly what you said. And I learned that, oh, that's why I'm stuck. And then I realized, okay, to be unstuck, I'm going to have a little help. But he did it. And he reached his ideal body weight that he wanted in November. And he stayed there. He has stayed there. And it gives me goosebumps to say, oh my God, his life completely reversed from the direction it was heading to the one that it's going in now. As they did that, though, they went around to everybody that's in their support group, and it's probably under a dozen people, maybe 8, I don't remember, 8 to 10 people that are in the support group. He says, all of us look at our labs and our accomplishments. And throughout the year, there was definitely times where you're like, yeah, I'm so over this. I don't want to do this. I want to go back to my other way of living. And it was because of that support group that they were able to get through that valley and then say, all right, I'll try again. And when I look at the second class, this is where I have confessions of a 20-year internist. As I said, that I had a party foul on the second one, where we said for them to do this. We told people to do this, and indeed many people did. But I had a personal setback in the last week of the last class, and although I finished out the class, it wasn't my best work. By the 20th and 21st day, I was grieving over some things in my life that had happened that I was just very disappointed. And when we were closing out the class, although the coaches told their classes what to do, it was some failed leadership on my part that I didn't emphasize how important those support groups were. And I did say it on the next few Tuesday nights and tried to get the message out and in an email, but there's nothing like what happens in this, it's like energy, where everybody's energy was chaos at first, and then it got better and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And then they were in a vortex, all moving in the same direction. And the key in that moment is that you have a rhythm that you continue on. That we said, no, it's really important that you have a support group. Now go out and start one on your own. And instead of saying, stick with this tribe you've got, they all know the rules. And, you're not here to be the best of friends, but you are to be in a journey of others who are struggling with the same problems that you've had. And, this time, as we look at the students in the group, I'm carefully studying what they struggle with and trying to put them in certain groups together to say, how can we predict who's going to create the relationships that last forever? Oh, I should probably do this, sorry. So yeah, the comment was, what happens at the end of the day? The transition back to a healthy diet? Is that what you mean? Because the more you eliminate carbs, the more, when you add them back, it's going to cause weight gain instantly. So what do you gain in the long run? And I kept this comment on purpose because there is so much these people gained. That when I looked back, this one support group was somebody that checked in this morning at my support group, the one I run. that it just helps me remember what was the trajectory that they were on. That the number of folks that write in and say, well, you can't lose all that weight in 3 weeks. I've got way too many problems. I'm like, yeah, but you can do the major first step in those 3 weeks. And it is truly what Steve and his friends, his tribe did this morning. That process is, without a doubt, one of the most powerful ways of saying, oh, how do you stay in the long game? How do you get this 20 years later still off of it? How do you break the cycle? So the series on the cycle breaking that we did over the summer, I really had several of you write in and tell me about what your journey's been since either you've taken the class or even the online class. I don't expect this, my intense 21-day metabolic kick to be the best answer for everybody. I know that some of you can't afford it. I know that there are many things that I do for free. Tuesday Night Lives are a great way to show you community, to show you what I'm doing, and to give you some insights to what other people are struggling with. That online course, I think, is one of the most affordable ways to get through. And people say, well, you can just buy the book. Yes, you can. You can buy the book and the workbook, and you can use that in the course. But what I've learned about patients who aren't doing well, who have metabolic disease for 20 years, is their brains don't work very well. This was very true with my mom, an avid reader in her youth, but as she got sick, as her metabolism was broken, her brain could not read. Even an audiobook, which was much better, she did much better with an audiobook. It wasn't until she got healthy that she went back to reading. And so when you say, well, just go read the book, it's the same thing I was doing when I said, just go start a support group all by yourself. Well, let me help you. Let me help you. Okay, let's go back and do a couple more of these because we are going to get to your questions here too. Okay, so I think that was the last one actually. Oh yeah, that was the last one. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. This is the last one. You're setting a bad example. Well, this is the last story. I'm like, oh, isn't there another story I was supposed to tell? Yes, this is the last story I was going to tell. So one of the hardest parts about, some of the transparency that I do try to offer you is that, well, you can show up on Tuesday night and you can see my numbers after a fast. But what the folks in my life know is that I don't always get those numbers. That if you watch the video that I put out on Friday, it talks about how I had a DEXA scan and I was doing pretty good in my life, but I did not lose any fat. And why is that? Because I have setbacks. I have disappointments. That I have a life of coping with carbohydrates too. And when I learn from patients as they succeed, and I am inspired by them, inspired to watch what they've come through, what they've lost in their life, and so when people say, you're setting a bad example, I actually take that very seriously. This is not a bad. This is the exact thing that I want. Well, that I have to do for me. That as I sit here about 2 months away from being 52 years old, I know what happens next. I've seen it for 20 years, what happens as their health gets a little worse and then it slips a little further and a little further and a little further, and their freedom sinks down too. And I was headed there. I was just like you. I just because I wrote the prescriptions didn't mean I wasn't going to have to take them. And by the grace of God, and I told my coaches today, we had our first meeting to kind of get everybody ready, is that, well, this is not what I was planning. I had a message to God, and it was get my clinic back up when I get to Florida, and we're going to definitely, we're going to, pick up where I left off, and this is exactly how I was going to do life. And then it was one setback, and the next one, and the next one. And the whole while, I was really changing lives in something that, well, nobody else was doing. And so I do offer that in my life, when I went through the first 21 day, I cleaned up a lot of things. When I went through the second 21 day, cleaned up a few more things. And I know as I head into this next 21-day challenge, 21 days of really perfect, what I would ask a cancer patient to do, what I would ask a seizure patient to do. Well, that's what the course teaches, and that's what you get put in a tribe for. And it is truly what I have to do in order to, give my health span the same years as my lifespan. And it isn't a bumper sticker answer to the questions that are out there, but it really is what I will do as long as God lets me to keep showing you here's what 21 days of really a really good journey looks like. And we're going to keep having those little baby support groups come right out of right out of this product. It is 2 times a year. It is where we pay for most of the work that goes into being a good YouTube channel. And I appreciate the people who are supporting us by attending, but I will, without a doubt, know that your health will be rewarded to you, well, just like mine is being. We're gonna hop over and get your questions answered, and I've been looking at some of the comments over here, so I know that I can put here the live chat, and I have got some good questions here. Let's go here. And we've got some pretty good questions in here. We got about 10 of them. We better get started. We're never going to get done. Okay, let's go to the questions. All right, so let's begin with Lois, who says, will the cost next February be the same as now? Yeah, we think this is the right price point. A couple things why we have said that is that we want people that are committed. In fact, we've had a couple people who wanted to know if we could gift it to them. They were influencers, and I thought, that's a nice idea, but they didn't show up. Meaning when people part with this kind of money, it's an intense course. The hardest part for the coaches is when people don't show up to the groups and really be a part of it. So we know that looking at the commitment is what we're sorting for. Who is committed? And it's true, they show up. People that buy the online course for the $500, or if they get a discount on it, $300. I have some of them that have never watched anything in the second module. So I mean, what was that? 40 minutes of time. This they show up for, and so we think we found the sweet spots for what it takes to cover the costs for the channel for the year, and that's what we're doing. All right, back to the next question. Tony J writes in, will my insulin resistance improve with A1C, triglycerides, and HDL in your class? So it is through metabolism that we do that, Tony, that your improvement inside your mitochondria, we know that it will take a plunge of some of the hormones that do not work well, that are overproduced in people with insulin resistance, and it will take a surge of ones that make you feel better. That is exactly what we do in this course. When people say, the weight's going to come right back on. No, that's the whole point. You can do some flash diets that do take off weight, and congratulations. But the return is because you didn't manipulate the metabolism. Metabolism has rules. We do, I said this in the folks who attended the masterclass. If you look at what I think the best part about this, I'm kind of a nerd, I guess. What I think the best part about the 21-day course is, it's the core content that I spent probably 9 months expecting to be having patients that I was going to see in my clinic, last spring. But that didn't work out for me. And I do see patients. I do get to see patients, but not in the way that I was hoping I would get to. So as I look at what I was going to do for all my insulin-resistant patients was these lectures. So I put them as the core content, the part that is recorded in there. So between those lectures and our 15 days together, the understanding of how do you lower A1C and reverse insulin resistance and improve triglycerides You cannot do it in 21 days, but you get a really good head start on what you need to do after the 21 days. And we do it. We do it with you. Your coach will do it with you. I do it. It is when the person said you're setting a bad example, I'm like, no, I'm actually doing the opposite. I'm doing it right along with you. All right, next one. Amy T writes in and says, hello, I signed up for the class and I am on the Keto Continuum number 11 and 12. Will we be able to proceed from that continuum? Yes, I am losing at a steady 5 pounds a month, but can't figure out my chemistry. Yep, Amy, you're going to love that. So we have people come in at all stages. 11 and 12 is a pretty advanced level. And sometimes we ask you to back up for a hot minute when they're struggling like that, just to see a few results. But these are perfect examples of what we will unpack a lot further, because, well, I have questions for you is to tell you what would happen next. I need to learn more about who you are. And I bet there are a couple hundred other people who would like to know your story as well. Now, people volunteer to be cases. You don't have to do that, but it is truly my favorite part of the course, because I get to be in the nitty-gritty. I get to really advise people on, well, how do you reverse this? How do you fix that? So good question. Yes, you're in the right direction. Let's go back over here. So next says, I hope to do another class after this one. Can't attend this class due to treatment schedule. Well, we will pray for you and hope your health treatment schedule coincides next time. I signed up for the course and payment was accepted, but have not received any other information. When can I expect the course information? My team is very good. That is something I was supposed to say earlier. Well, it is something we are waiting for the cart to close, which is tomorrow, at which point we will know how many students we have, and we will divide them up into the coaches' classrooms and sort them into the right places. As soon as we get that sorting done, oh, and I had an infographic. Oh, bugger. I was going to have that ready tonight, and I totally forgot. An infographic that says, no, the cart closes tomorrow at midnight or sooner if we fill all those seats, and we are down to the wire with the last couple dozen left to sell. And then we'll put you in our team will be working furiously on Thursday to get everybody into the right classrooms. And on Friday, we'll send out the emails that will invite you into the classrooms, and you'll begin meeting your classmates, and class starts Monday, September 11th. So you're right on track. There's nothing you've missed, Jan. Thanks for the question. All right. Debbie says, good evening. I am on step 6 of Keto Continuum. What does Dr. Boz say about keto for someone with symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis? Is it okay? Is keto okay? You know, Deb, not only is it okay, it is my recommendation. When you look at rheumatoid arthritis, it is an autoimmune disorder. And autoimmune disorders mean that your body's immune system, which was supposed to target invaders, the problems, the foreign bodies, the foreign invaders of your system. But your immune system made a mistake. Whether it was from a link in your genetics or more commonly a chronic inflammatory process deep within your body, within your immune system, within that bone marrow and those lymph nodes. But it made a mistake and it started attacking the lining in the joints. And when that rheumatoid arthritis gets in its flare, well, it destroys that connective tissue in the joints, and the deformities from that are a consequence of your body eating away that connective tissue. When you say, well, how do I stop that? In modern medicine says, turn down the immune system. And although that's a brilliant idea, and when they're in a terrible flare, it works wonderfully, but it is not how to live the rest of your life. The rest of your life is get the immune system to stop doing that. And the only, I was of the generation of the physicians who said, oh, once you get those things, it never goes away. Why did I say that? Because that's all I'd ever been taught. That's all I'd ever seen. I mean, my mom's cancer was an autoimmune-based process where she was attacking her own white blood cells. And she had thousands of deformed and dysfunctional white blood cells because of that because her immune system wasn't attacking connective tissue, her immune system attacked white blood cells. When you have lupus, the immune systems attack the blood vessels. When you have multiple sclerosis, the immune system attacks the brain. When you look at Crohn's disease, the immune system attacks the GI system. All of these are autoimmune. And all of them have the treatment plans that are very advanced, that are a life-saving option for people when they're in a flare, is to turn down the immune system. But it is not how you should live your life. The only thing I've ever seen reverse it, and I thought it was a miracle the first time I saw it. Like, that's never going to happen again. And I've seen it again and again and again. But you can't do it halfway. You have to have the understanding of how to pulse your immune system, your metabolism, that you have to rev it in a place and calculate it. You cannot guess. Everybody's body is a little different based on age and how long that immune system has been under attack. And we teach you that in this course. All right. So, great question. Sasha. Oh, I love your name, Sasha. All right. Sasha says, just signed up for the Keto Continuum today. Any suggestions on getting a deep sleep on keto? I am on a keto reboot and 5 days into the reset, but sleep is eluding me. Hello from Brooklyn. Well, nice to meet you, Sasha. There is a great activity that I do. In fact, if you Google or YouTube, I guess, search in YouTube, left-handed loops and Dr. Boz. Now, I know I did it on a live, but I also think I've done it as maybe we did it as a short, maybe we just did it as a video. I've done it several times, but I run a brains course every year that teaches how to brains. That was what my clinic is all about, is peak brain performance. That I take care of chronic medical problems, and that's bread and butter, right? But what was the underlying thread of all my patients is, how do I help them get peak brain performance? No matter where they've come to me, whether they have Parkinson's or bipolar or sleep disorders. And so I know a lot about sleep, a lot about training brains to sleep. The other place that I would tell you to get the Cliff Notes for is if you go to my blog, if you go into the bozmd.com and you type in A Case for Sleep. It's linked to several videos that are on YouTube, but it also writes out the case story of somebody when their brain hasn't been sleeping and we have to train it. I don't like using prescription medications any more than the next guy, but when I have an ornery, stubborn brain that will not shut down, there are things that you can do. I don't reach for that first, but it is something that most people, I tell them, print out the articles and take it to your doctor and ask for that. So yeah, take a look at that article, and then I would be doing left-handed loops, what I do with teenagers and kids, and I've done a lot of work with inmates as they don't get prescription medications, and we say, no, it's not what I would be doing with you anyway. Here's what I would do. So take a look at that, and I think you'll find some good answers, and know that the longer you're in a nutritional ketosis, the faster that brain is repairing, and the quicker we can get your brain back to sleeping the way it should have always been sleeping. So don't lose hope, and thanks for checking in from Brooklyn, New York. All right, we have Christina. All right, how do we schedule exercise in conjunction with fasting and sleep cycle to maximize autophagy, trying to catch the proper waves of ketone glucose fluxes? Yes, Christina, I'll tell you how I do it, and then you can see if it fits with anything that you're doing. So in my, when looking at a schedule, I don't talk about exercise a lot, and especially if you followed for the last couple of years, which is where the channel has definitely grown. I've been in this season I was telling you about, where the Jewish gay school that my son thought he was going to, which has turned out to be an awesome school, by the way. We landed in Florida, where I went from, well, South Dakota doesn't have traffic. I might have chirped about traffic one time in my whole 50 years of being in South Dakota. But yeah, they have that in Tampa. And so I landed in a place for the last couple of years where it was nearly 3 hours of commuting on the road to get him to school and me to my office, and then stick around for wrestling practice, and then he would do homework on the way home. And we just didn't, I had a goal of one time a week. And I didn't talk about it much because some weeks I didn't make it. My one commitment a week I didn't make. But what I have learned to do since then is that the rhythm is now, in fact, I made the leaderboard in the month of August, that I made it to 16 workouts in August, which is like, that's a record for me in years. But I fast every week. And what I have learned to do is that the fasting schedule is what I set up first. I got very comfortable with not eating for at least 48 hours, and usually it was closer to 60. It was about 1 in a half dozen to a 1 in 10 that I would go I would go 72 hours a week. But the rhythm of fasting is something that I could predict, and I set up carefully. And then I liked what happened when I would work out during the fast. The reason why is I would work out always in the mornings. The ketones would plunge, they would just soar the first few weeks when I was doing my fasting, but then it came to a pretty stable level during fasting. And as I would add the workouts in the morning of my fast, so I eat the last meal usually somewhere around noon on Sundays, so I would work out on either Monday morning or Monday afternoon. I learned if I did it on Monday afternoon, it just surged my ketones so high I couldn't sleep at night. And I know that if I would have kept that schedule and I would have worked out a couple more times a week during the week, that would have leveled out. But I was just doing that one workout a week, and I was doing my fast. So what has happened now that I don't commute 3 hours a day is that I put that exercise on Monday mornings, and I've learned not to use it as an excuse. Like when you say, oh, I'm fasting, I don't want to work out, I'm doing enough. But I learned, don't make it this exception, that it is a normal rhythm for me to, I'm a woman who's had 3 kids. Okay, my hormones are so easily turned into insulin resistance, they zip right back to where they used to be. That I knew that adding fasting and a weight training exercise, I go to CrossFit. Now, I'm the worst person in the dang room, but I still do it. And I could find that the first few times I did that, my ketones like soared up to 4 or something, like 4.5, and I had all this energy. But then my body got used to that, and it now goes up to 2.5, so that's fun, but it's not the starry-eyed, I can't sleep at night. So what I'm trying to show you is that having a rhythm where you fast and you don't use fasting as an excuse to work out, you say, this is a normal part of what I do. And then I think hitting zone 2, which is a pretty good breathlessness as you exercise, is something you should be achieving in that workout. Other things I did to practice that if I couldn't get a workout in is I would do my little pop-up sauna at home. So I'd get home from that long commute and I would at least do a sauna while I was fasting. And again, what I was really doing is practicing making ketones by pushing my mitochondria while in a fasted state. And it really was this, you know, you can call it a cleanse. I don't like that word. I think that's kind of overrated. But it really was a place where I could push reset and sweep out some glycogen, empty the things that I might, you know, that glass of wine on Sunday did. I don't know if I got the question answered there, but I understand what you're fighting with, which is how do you get a production of ketones that pushes autophagy? The levers you get to pull on are fasting. That's one lever. Exercise is another lever, and sauna is another lever. And depending on how insulin resistant you've been in the past, if you're lean and you've got a lot of history of stable muscle fitness, then producing ketones becomes more about the supply of what kind of fat are you delivering. Those are the folks where I'm like, you should not be skipping your MCT. Medium chain triglycerides for my lean athletes is keep those ketones in production. And the number one reason why is that ketone in circulation prevents the breakdown of muscle. As you age, that muscle is so easily lost. But we know that at least a 0.5, but I'm hoping you can push it into that, 0.8, 0.9, really gets a ketone level that protects against the muscle breakdown. And that is, that's what every athlete as you age should preserve, is don't use the muscle. And if you're already lean, you might need to supplement with MCTs routinely. Good question. All right, we'll do at least one more. Tony writes in and says, what happens to you, Dr. Boz, if you don't fast every week for 2 days. You know, it's not terrible. I've had when I went on the keto cruise, I did not fast. I told husband we're not doing that. We're having normal life. Boy, this question really tempts me. Can diabetics do keto? They have to do keto. That's the only way you get it to go away. But let's go back to Tony, not get distracted there. So it's a good question, Tony. I do okay. I mean, I usually have some of these, meaning I overeat. That's how I ended up insulin resistant, is I like food. I've learned that I can't like it as much. I mean, my kids make fun of me because I don't cook anymore. Like cooking just brings out the wrong side of me. I want to turn right into my mother and make comforting food for them, and that's not what I want to teach them. So when I don't fast, I still eat. You know that my eating window is pretty narrow. Probably about a 4-hour eating window, and it starts with some sardines usually. And I mean, I love these. I'll put in some carnivore crisps if I'm getting to the end of the night and I know better than to eat too much. What I find works for me is the 48 hours gives me a reset that if I do mess up on the other days, I'm still able to get that blood sugar down to what I know is needed to really empty out my storage, which is, you know, blood sugar usually in those 60s to 70s. Now, I did not get there this time because I had a glass of wine too late on Sunday. So 48 hours of not eating, which, okay, whatever. But most weeks I get that, you know, I get a blood sugar that I know is in gluconeogenesis, meaning I have emptied out the storage to the best of my ability. It's a time where I've usually had a workout. I've usually been in the sauna. My husband and I like to go to the sauna on Sunday afternoons, so it's a good sweat for me to start that fast. And then the workout usually happens on Mondays, and now it's Mondays and Tuesdays, and I'll hit that blood sugar of, you know, 55, 60. I know I'm in gluconeogenesis. That's why I do it. When I skip it, I just don't get everything emptied, and I probably don't screw up as much because I give myself a little grace, like, oh, hey, I did that. I'm good. And right, I definitely could be losing those final 15 pounds that every woman says she's supposed to lose. But after the 21 day, we'll do it then. All right, I'm going to check the blood sugars here. And I've been drinking. I haven't gotten a lot. I've only got about half the bottle in. But I am going to check my numbers and then call it good. And I will tell you that there are a few slots left in this class. I am looking forward to meeting the new students and really having the best 3 weeks ahead. So when I come to the show next Tuesday, you'll hear about how the class is going. It will only have been 1 day in the making, but I hope you're in the class. I hope you join us and you start what I think is the best reversal of 90 visits from the doctor over 3 weeks. Here we go. So glucose and ketones. And counting down. How do we do? So blood sugar stayed about the same. Ketones went up about 0.6. But by the time I'm done with the rest of that bubble water, filled with pucker up, it'll be a little higher. All right, folks, see you next week. Thanks for tuning in, and